So welcome again to our second class, and I would like to begin this morning with just a very brief summary of last class. Arunji has already posted the last lecture, so you are always welcome to revisit any previous class before we do a new class. So we are studying the Kena Upanishad. As I said last time, the Upanishads belong to and are found in the last sections of the four Vedas, which are the primary texts of our Hindu tradition. So the Upanishads are found at the conclusion of these Vedas. So the Kena Upanishad belongs to the Sam Veda. We have the Rik, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Veda. So it is an Upanishad that belongs to the Sam Veda. It is one of the shorter Upanishads. It consists of 35 verses, 35 mantras, which are divided into 4 chapters, or as we say, 4 adhyayas. So the last section of the Upanishads are referred to as the wisdom section. In Sanskrit, we say this is the Jnana Kanda. Jnana means knowledge or wisdom. The wisdom section of the Upanishads, which is also called the Vedanta. So Anta means end, Veda, the text. So Vedanta means that which is found at the end of the Veda. So it's called Vedanta, and is another way of speaking about the Upanishads. And so as we will see, the Upanishads are in the form of dialogues between teachers and students. Why do we study an Upanishad? I discussed last time. Because we regard the Upanishad as, the word I used last time, we regard the Upanishads as a pramana. So prama means valid knowledge, and pramana is a source of valid knowledge. So we regard the Upanishads as a pramana, as a source of valid knowledge. And as I said, in our tradition, a source of valid knowledge, whatever that source might be, has a number of important characteristics. One is that what it teaches us should not be contradicted by another source of valid knowledge. So it should not be contradicted. Non-contradiction or non-contradictedness is one of the criteria of valid knowledge. Because in our everyday life, we refute knowledge when it is contradicted. So a pramana must teach something to us which is not contradicted by another, this is important, by another valid source of knowledge. So that's the first characteristic. Second, a pramana, a valid source of knowledge, to be considered a valid source of knowledge, it must tell us something unique. It must teach us something which no other pramana does. And this we will get into more. Each pramana gives us a unique knowledge, a unique understanding of the world. You know, with my eyes I see forms, with my ear I hear sounds, with my skin I can touch, I have sensation, with my nostrils I smell. So each of the senses has a unique capacity, a unique field in which it operates. And so similarly, each pramana must reveal something unique, so it is not redundant. So the subject matter, the unique subject matter of the Upanishads is the infinite, Brahman, the divine. And so this is why we are studying this Kena Upanishad. So today I want to continue from where I stopped. Arunji sent to each one a copy of the Kena Upanishad. it would be very useful if you printed that copy, or at least you had it up on your screen while we're discussing. So, we're studying together, and then you can follow each of the verses as we go along. You don't have to. You're fine just listening. But I just wanted to say that in case you will like to have your text open, then that would be very nice. So each Veda, there are 4 Vedas, and each Veda has what we call a shanti mantra. Shanti means peace. So mantra means verse or sacred verse. So each Veda has a special shanti mantra. And this shanti mantra is recited, it's also included with the Upanishads, and is recited by the teacher and the student before the study begins. But actually, we have 4 Vedas, but we have 5 Shanti mantras. So that's interesting, but there's a very simple reason for that. The reason is that, so we have Rig Veda, Sam Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. But the Yajur Veda has what we call 2 branches, 2 shakas, 2 branches. One is Krishna Yajur Veda, and one is Shukla Yajur Veda. So therefore, for the Yajur Veda, there are 2 Shanti mantras, and that's how we end up with 4 Vedas, but 5 Shanti mantras because of the 2 branches of Yajur Veda. So as I said, each Veda has its own collection of Upanishads, and the Upanishads of a particular Veda will begin with the Shanti mantra of that Veda. Begins with the Shanti mantra of that Veda. So Kena Upanishad belongs, as I said, to Sam Veda, but to Sam Veda, and therefore we use for Kena Upanishad the Shanti mantra of the Sam Veda. These Shanti mantras are not incidental. They are a very important part. This prayer, this peace prayer, is not accidental or incidental. They are a very important part of the study of the text. Why? Why do the teacher and the students begin the study with Shanti mantra, with prayer? And there are several reasons. This morning I just mentioned two of the important reasons. So as I said earlier, the particular subject matter of the Upanishads is Brahman, the infinite. The infinite divine Brahman is the subject matter of the Upanishads. The first part of the Vedas, the subject matter is ritual, Karma Kanda. The last section, Jnana Kanda, the subject matter is the infinite divine Brahman. And so the Upanishads are an inquiry, a study into the nature of Brahman. We say in Sanskrit, Brahma Jigyasa, inquiry into the nature of Brahman. Jigyasa means inquiry. So this wish on the part of all of you to study, the desire to know Brahman, to devote one's time and energy to learning about Brahma, to Brahma Jigyasa, the study of Brahman, is regarded in our tradition as a form of worship. Study is worship. Inquiry into the nature of God is a form of worship. And therefore it begins with prayer. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna describes many forms of worship. Sreyan Dravyamayar Yajna Jnana Yajna Parantapaha. So he says, there are many forms of worship, and a lot of these forms of worship involve making material offerings. But Jnana Yajna, there is also the worship of study, the worship of Jnana. Jnana Yajna Parantapa. In fact, he says the worship of wisdom is Parantapa. It's excellent. He says it's the highest. It often happens that when we make material offerings in our worship, we use our hands to make offerings. And sometimes it should not be, but sometimes, the mind is not where the hands are. The mind is not where the body is. They often they're not in union. They don't coincide. Thoughts are sometimes very far away from what the body is doing. But in study, we are required to focus our minds on the subject that we are studying. In this case, Brahman. So the mind is where the act of studying is taking place. Because without such focus, understanding is not possible. So I think we should all understand the act of gathering together for Upanishad study as a form of worship. We regard it with the same reverence, the same sanctity as when we perform puja. Because we value, why do we study the Upanishad? Because we value the subject that we are learning about, which is the infinite divine. Study is worship. Study is worshipful. Second reason is that this prayer, the shanti mantra, springs from a recognition that the gain of knowledge, jnana, is facilitated by the presence of certain mental and emotional conditions. Study is fruitful when we bring to that study a certain disposition of mind, a certain disposition of heart. And therefore, teacher and student, before Upanishadic study, pray that they would be blessed with these conditions of heart and mind that make knowledge possible. Pray for the blessings of God so that they have the right disposition. Prayer helps to quieten. Prayer helps to still. Prayer helps to focus our minds before study. So let me now turn to the Shanti mantra that begins the Kena Upanishad. It's every Shanti mantra is very beautiful, and I hope to show you, some of the beauty and the depths of this Kena Upanishad prayer. So I'll recite first, and then we will discuss every sentence of this prayer. Om apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu srotramato balam indriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarod anirakaranam astvanirakaranam me astu tad atmane nirate ya upanishadsu dharmaste mai santu te mai santu. Om shanti shanti shanti. So the prayer begins, Om apyayanti mamangani. Om apyayanti mamangani. Angani means limbs. The limbs of the body, hands, feet, the organs of action, they are called angas, a plural here, angani. So, may my limbs, the prayer begins, teacher and student are together praying, may our limbs, apyayantu, may our limbs be strong. May they grow strong. May the limbs of our body be strong. Interesting. Why should they pray for strength of limbs? They are about to study, not to run at the Olympics. So why do they begin with this prayer? Mama angani, om apyayantu mama angani. May our limbs be strong. Vak, speech. Prana, breath, or the energies of the body. Eyes, chakshu, srotram, air. Ataha, balamindriyani, chasaravani. All the senses, all the organs of action, may they be strong and vigorous. So may the organs of our body and all our sense organs be strong and vigorous. Interesting opening for a prayer. But the first part of this prayer recognizes the importance of physical health. Physical health is important. Physical health, physical vitality are also important for the pursuit of knowledge. If the teacher is not well, if the teacher loses his voice or her voice, there is no teaching. So teacher and student pray first for physical health, physical vigor. Each year, as a teacher myself, others who are teaching remember, each year when the flu season comes around, then we notice, the drop in class attendance, right? Because there is a physical problem. There's a higher absenteeism. So as a teacher, I appreciate the point of this prayer. I want my students to be healthy in body and in senses. Because good health and physical vigor facilitate attentiveness to the work of the mind. Even to sit for a class, without pains in the body is an important prerequisite. Because our tradition, we take pride in the human body as a gift of the divine. We understand it as an instrument through which we come to understand God, and we express this gratitude by a healthy lifestyle that promotes physical well-being. So this has been acknowledged in the prayer. Apyayantu mama angani vak pranas chakshu srotram ataha balam indriyani chasarvani. And so the prayer is very detailed. We it focuses on each organ, and we are to remember each organ as we recite the prayer. Speech, vak, important. When you're studying with a teacher, speech is important because the Upanishads are in the form of dialogue. Teacher speaks, students are not just silent, they also speak. So both should have vigorous speech, vak, speech. So it's important. Speech is important for teaching and for discussion. Prana, energy, we should not be sluggish in study. The vitality of the bodily energies. Eyes, for the reading of the text. The air for attentive listening. All of the important organs are mentioned here. So that's the first opening part of this prayer. Apyayantu mama angani vak pranaha chakshuhu srotram atho balam indriyani chasarvani. Then the next line. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. Next line of the prayer. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. A very beautiful expression is used in this sentence. Brahma Upanishadam. Upanishadam Brahma. Upanishadam means from the Upanishads. Brahma. So, see, I told you before that the Upanishads are a source of knowledge for the infinite Brahman. It is the pramana. And this prayer reiterates this point. By describing Brahman, as Upanishadam Brahma. That Brahma, that Brahman who is known through the Upanishads is called Upanishadam Brahma. The Brahma that is known through the Upanishad Pramana is called Upanishadam Brahma. Brahma, that is the knowledge of which is gained through the words, through the teachings of the Upanishads. The same sentence is used in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that the Kena Shanti mantra uses here. It is important because Brahman is not, he doesn't say Pratyaksha Brahma. This is not the Brahman that you can know by the eyes. It is not Pratyaksha Brahma. It is not Brahman that is seen with the physical eyes. It is not the Brahma that is known through perception. It is not Anumana Brahman. It is not the divine that is known through inference, but it is the divine that is Upanishadam Brahma, the Brahma that is known through the scripture, through the sacred teaching, the Upanishad. It is a unique subject matter. So it's Upanishadam Brahma. Sarvam Upanishadam Brahma is the sentence. And so we will, but it also, this line also uses the word Sarvam. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. Sarvam means all. So what this prayer is also anticipating is it is the essence of the teaching. Sarvam, all is Brahman. Sarvam Brahma, all is Brahman, all is Upanishadam Brahma. This Brahman who is known through the Upanishads is all. Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam. So we get here at the very beginning an articulation of the central teaching of the Upanishad, that everything is one, all is Brahma, which we will of course unpack as we study this text. And when we studied Nirvana Shatakam, those of you who attended my classes, you will remember our discussion there. You remember all of the examples that I use, example of clay and clay pots and so on. And of course, the beautiful line of Bhagavad Gita, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Vasudeva is everything. The Lord Vasudeva is everything. The same teaching in Chandogya Upanishad, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. So this prayer selects the core teaching here and lifts it up at the very beginning itself. Then, so after Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam, Maham Brahma Nira Kuryam, Maham Brahma Nira Kuryam, Mama Brahma Nira Karod, Anira Karanam Astvanira Karanam. Interesting. Maham Brahma Nira Kuryam. May we, teacher and student, may we not Nirakuryam, may we not reject this Brahman. May we not reject Brahman. Maham Brahma Nirakuryam. May we not reject this Brahman about which we are studying. What does it mean to reject Brahman? Why is this included in the prayer before studying? May we not reject Brahman. So this rejection, Nirakuryam, may take the form of a conclusion without proper inquiry that Brahman does not exist. So if you start off with the conclusion that Brahman does not exist, this is the rejection of Brahman. This is how we reject Brahman. I used the example in the first class, you may remember, the story I told you from my guru, Puja Swami Dayananda Saraswati, about the the person who had the surgery for his eyes, and the eyes were bandaged. Then the surgeon came to remove the bandage from his eyes and told him, you will see when the bandage is removed. And then the patient said, no, do not remove my bandage. Convince me first that I will see. Then alone, I will allow you to remove the bandage. So, he already rejected the possibility of sight by the removal of the bandage. There was no what we call sraddha in the words of the surgeon. So in other words, such what we call a priori denial of the reality of Brahman prevents us from having an open mind when we study. We don't come to the study with an open mind. In other words, the prayer is, may I keep an open mind to this knowledge. May I not be cynical about Brahman. So minimally, we must be open to the possibility of the truth or the reality of Brahman. The Upanishad does not demand, so-called belief without inquiry, but it says, when you come to the inquiry, when you come to the study, keep an open mind. Do not reject. Keep an open mind. Because why are we likely to reject? And I'll discuss further, but as I said before, this is Upanishadam Brahma. This is the Brahma that is known through the study of the Upanishads. It is not Pratyaksha Brahma. It is not Brahman to be seen with the eyes. It is not Brahman to be inferred through reason. So we are more likely to deny a reality because it is not Pratyaksha Brahman. It is not Anumana Brahman. It is Upanishadam Brahman. So we said, okay, I can't see it, it doesn't exist. I can't infer it, it doesn't exist. So I deny Brahman because it's a very different kind of reality, it's a very different truth. So they pray. Maham Brahma Nirakuryam. Let us study. What beautiful, huh? Let us study with open minds. Let us not conclude about the subject matter before we sincerely inquire, before we sincerely study. Maham Brahma Nirakurya, Mama Brahma Nirakarod. May we not reject Brahman, Mama Brahma Nirakarod, and may Brahman not reject us. In fact, Brahman never rejects us. Since as we will learn, we can never be separate from Brahman by time. We can never be separate from Brahman by space because Brahman is infinite. God does not reject anyone. But if we reject, God rejects us as it were, because we reject. Because we reject. When we conclude that the infinite does not exist, our rejection of the infinite, our rejection of Brahman leads, as it were, to Brahman's rejection of us. We deny ourselves the blessings of knowing Brahman. So the teacher and the student, we pray together, may we not negate, may we not deny Brahman. So let us keep an open mind. Let us come to the study with what we speak of in Sanskrit as Shraddha. Bhagavad Gita says, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. The one who comes with an open mind to inquire, labhate jnanam, will indeed know, will indeed learn. We can also see this part of the prayer as a prayer for God's blessing, as a prayer for grace, Ishvara, the divine grace. Even when we flounder, even when we are forgetful, we pray that the divine will always draw us. Never let us stray, always draw us back to what he is. So God's grace is expressed through the teacher, the guru, and these lines might also be read as a prayer for the teacher, that he does not give up on us. The teacher does not give up on us. You know, there's a beautiful verse in the opening sequence of verses in Viveka Chudamani, which is a text attributed to Adi Shankara. My teacher used to quote this very often. Durlabham trayame vaitat devanugraha hetukam manushyatvam mumukshutvam mahapurusha shamshrayaha. Shankara says there, you know, durlabham, very difficult. It is very rare, very difficult. Trayam, these three things are very difficult to find together. They don't often come together. They're very difficult. Durlabham trayame vaitat. Deva anugraha. Anugraha means the blessings. Deva anugraha. They come through the grace of Ishvara, the grace of God. What are these three? Manushyatvam, to be a human being, to be born as a human being. Manushya, not male or female, to be a human being. Manushyatvam. And then secondly, what he calls mumukshutvam, means to have the desire to know Brahman, the desire to understand, to seek Brahman, the wish to know Brahman is called mumukshutvam. The student is also called a mumukshu, one who has the wish, the desire to know. And then the third one, he says, Mahapurusha samshrayaha, to be in the company or to find a teacher, a good teacher. These three, human birth, desire to know, and teacher. When these three come together, then knowledge takes place. And now the final line of the prayer. Tad atmani nirate ya upanishadsu dharmaste mai santu te mai santu. Tad atmani nirate ya upanishadsu dharmaha te mai santu te mai santu. So here also we saw Upanishadam Brahma, that Brahma who is known through Upanishads. And here the teacher and the student speaks says, Upanishadsu dharmaste. Upanishadsu dharmaste. May the virtues, dharmaha, may those virtues that are taught Upanishadsu, which are also taught in the Upanishads, are called Upanishadsu dharmaha. May those virtues taught in the Upanishads, mai santu, te mai santu, reside in our hearts and minds. Upanishadsu dharmaha, may those great virtues taught in the Upanishads reside in our heart. Tada atmani nirate. So we who are dedicated to study, nirate, dedicated to study of what? Of Brahman, Atma, Brahman. Tad atmani nirate. May we who are dedicated to the study of Brahman, may in our hearts and minds the virtues of the Upanishads reside. Why? Because as I said in our first lecture, certain conditions of mind are necessary for knowledge to take place. The conditions that make knowledge possible. And we'll see in this text itself discusses some of those, what is called dharmaha, those virtues. They include virtues like non-injury, ahimsa, truth, satya, asteya, freedom from greed, aparigraha, generosity, compassion, all of those virtues that lead to quietness of mind and compassion for others. So they pray that the mind and the heart, they would also be in the right state while they are studying. This is a very common statement in the Upanishads. You know, it's a very The Upanishad has its own, what I would call its own standards for the gain of knowledge. In Katha Upanishad is a very famous mantra. Navirato duscharitan ashanto na samahita na shanta manaso vapi pragyane naiva apnuyat. What does it say? One who has not abstained from evil conduct. Na virato duscharitan. One who has not stopped hurting others. Na shanta manasa. One who is not calm in heart and mind. One who does not have control of the mind, mental focus, mental calmness. Na ashanta manasa, one who is not peaceful in heart and mind. Pragya ne naivam apnuyat, will not know, will not gain this wisdom, will not gain this knowledge. So there's a description also of what Kena here says as Upanishadam dharmaha, the virtues that are taught in the Upanishads. So this is the Shanti mantra of Kena Upanishad. I would recite this when we begin our classes, next class, because it would be so nice if we can all learn this beautiful mantra. It is specifically for the study of the Upanishads, but as you can see, the mantra is a beautiful prayer for all occasions. It is as wide, very wide use. So we can all learn this prayer. It's a prayer for physical well-being, so that ill health doesn't intrude itself when we study. A prayer for the removal of all mental and emotional impediments to learning, and third, a prayer for the grace of God as teacher and student. And of course, all mantras in the Upanishad in our Hindu tradition end with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Always three repetitions of Shanti. And this is also meaningful because there are three kinds of obstacles. First Shanti is Adhyatmika Pratibandha. Adhyatmika means within ourselves, all of the obstacles that are within our own hearts and minds. So we pray for peace. So freedom from internal obstacles, Adhyatmika. Pratibandha means obstacles. Then, second Shanti, Adibhautika Pratibandha. Those obstacles that might come to us from the intervention of other human beings. Those sources of disturbance that are caused by others in our environment, other human beings in our environment. So may they also be peaceful. And finally, Adhidaivika Pratibandha. Obstacles that might be created by natural forces, by nature, on inclement weather, storms. So Adhyatmika within us, Adibhautika, other beings, especially human beings, and Adhidaivika, natural. They can also, erode one's peace. So Shanti, Shanti, Shanti is the prayer for, a threefold prayer for peace of these related to Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, Adhidaivika. So let us now turn to the first verse of Kena Upanishad. Kena Upanishad. So here we see why it is called Kena Upanishad, because the first mantra begins with the word Kena. So it takes its name from the opening verse, verse 1, which starts Kena, means by whom. By whom. So like most of the Upanishads, this one also, Kena, begins with a question from the student. It's important. This teaching takes place through the mechanism or the method that we call Samvada. Samvada means dialogue. It's a dialogical method between teacher and student. So the question comes from the student. It's really very important, for all of us who are teachers, because only when our student asks a question in class do we really know where the student, as we say, where the student is coming from. Because you can give a lecture for 60 minutes, and at the end of it the student asks a question, then you realize, oh my goodness, this is what I should have been talking about. This is what is on the student's mind, and I missed it completely. I did not address that question. So it's always a good teaching technique to begin in a class with, after they have a reading, to ask him, what is your question? What's the question that you bring to this class? So the Upanishads always begin with the student's question. As a teaching, as a what we say, as a pedagogical technique, it's very effective. This is the method. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, says Gita. Tad vidhi pariprashnena. Learn by asking questions. Learn from your teachers. What a remarkable statement. Not stifling questions. Gita says, tad vidhi pariprashnena. Pariprashna means many questions. Learn by asking questions. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshina. And those who are lovers of wisdom will teach. Those who are lovers of wisdom, Gita says, will teach the student who asks asks respectfully. Sevaya, pariprashnena, sevaya. Because there are always doubts that are anticipated in dialogue. So Kena Upanishad opens with this very beautiful, well-stated question by the student, who has obviously given a lot of thought to this matter already. So we see that this student has already given a lot of thought to this matter and brings a very well articulated, targeted, concise question to the teacher. And what is that question? Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha kena prana prathama praiti yuktaha kene shitam vacham imam vadanti chakshuhu srotram kau devo yunakti. Beautiful, beautifully articulated question. Kene shitam, first part of the question. Kena is the first word. By whom? Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. Patati preshitam manaha. Manaha means mind. Mind is called a manaha. So he says, by whom? By whom? By whose will? By whose presence? By whose power? Because of whom the mind can conceive thought. By who? Because of whom this mind thinks, can imagine objects, can visualize, can reason. So for example, I am speaking here to you in this class. You are hearing me. And as I speak, I am making sounds. But you are hearing my sounds as words, as meaningful words. And this is a unique power of the mind to translate sound into meaningful language. So the student says, by whose power? What is the power that enables the mind to conceive thought, to have this capacity for thought, to name objects, to move from one object to another? Is is the power of the mind to think, to function in this way. Is it inherent in the mind, or is it derived from some other source? Is there some other source that enlivens this mind? Is there another mind that directs this mind? Is there something that is not a thought, but in the presence of which the mind is capable of thought? So he's asking a question. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. Kena prana pratama praiti yuktaha. Pratama prana. So prana is the Sanskrit term we use, for the various energies of the body. And we spoke, we speak of 5 pranas, pancha prana, the 5 energies that allow the physical body to function efficiently. But in this verse, the student says, he says, pratama prana, the foremost or the chief, pratama prana means, and what is pratama prana? Pratama prana is breath, is the breathing. Breathing is one of the energies, but it's called pratama prana because in the absence of breath, none of the other pranas will work. So it's called the foremost of the pranas. So what is it? He's asking. United because of what does this breath go in and out? What vitalizes the breathing process in the body that is necessary for all other functions? But whether we are conscious or not, awake or asleep, breathing goes on. We breathe in, we breathe out. What makes this possible? All organs depend on the breathing for functioning, but what makes breathing possible? What does breathing depend on? He's asking. Kena prana pratama praiti yukta. What makes breathing possible? Kene shitam imam vacham vadanti. Vacham is speech. What makes speech possible? What is the power because of which we can speak? Vak, vacham, vadanti. Chakshu, srotram, hearing. Chakshu, seeing, srotram, hearing. Kau devo yunakti. By what? Is there some being? By what being do these sense organs function? What enables us to see, to hear, to touch, to smell, to taste? This is his question. By whom? Kena. Because of which, by whom, all of these things happen. They function. In his thinking, the student's thinking, the mind, the body, the sense organs are of the nature of instruments. They are instruments. The eye is an instrument of seeing, the ear of hearing, the nose of smell, and the skin of touch. All instruments require something more for their functioning. When we see a toy move, toy that we buy for our children or grandchildren, we see the toy move, we suspect that there's something more that causes the toy to move. The motion of the toy is not intrinsic, it is derived from something else. For the child, it may be that the toy moves. For the adult, there's something else that enables this toy to move. So in a similar way, he's asking, for this body, what is it that enables this body to function? He's not asking a question about physiological function. It's not. So the answer, if I were to say, to explain how sight occurs in the eye through the optic nerves and all of that, that would not be the right answer. The Sruti is not a pramana for that. That's something we can learn about through the study of physiology. The student's question is much more fundamental here. Now, just think with me, before I conclude today, why this question is important. What is at this student's mind? So think of the world, right? The world outside. what are the features of this world outside of us? We can identify certain characteristics of the world, right? One is that the universe is made up of, in our tradition, we say, made up of 5 elements. We say akasha, space, vayu, air, agni, heat, apaha, water, prithvi, elements, the elements. So the world is, as we say, the world is bhautikam, right? It is made up of matter, right? Made up of the 5 elements. It's bhautikam, made up of 5 elements. That's the first quality. And how about the body? The physical body with sense organs and all of that is also bhautikam, made up of matter. The body is bhautikam, the world is bhautikam. Then, secondly, the world is an object. We see it. We say it is drishyatvam. We see it. We objectify it. We see the trees. We see the hills. We see the mountains. We see the rivers. We see the lakes. We see the oceans. It's called drishyatvam. These are all seen. So, bhautikam, composed of matter, drishyatvam, seen, two characteristics, also true of the body. Body is also seen. I can look at my body and see all of it's an object. We discussed, we are aware of it, it's an object, it's seen. So world and body, composed of matter, seen. And thirdly, because it is seen, it has all of these characteristics. It has form, it has touch, it has smell, it has taste, it has sight. So we say sagunatvam. It has certain characteristics that can be experienced through the senses. Composed of matter, object, objectified, seen, and then has all of these, is sagunatvam, has the characteristics of form, touch, smell, taste, and sight. World changes, it's subject to time, like body. So we say world is savikaritvam, vikaraha. Vikara means a change. It is subject to change. It's vikaraha. It's subject to change. So it is savikaritvam. And because it's subject to change, it is temporary. Eventually, the body, we say the world also in our Hindu tradition, it goes through these cycles of change. So eventually it will perish because it is temporary. Agama paitvam. It comes and it goes. Agama paitvam. So these are the qualities of the world. These are also the qualities of the body. Drishyatvam, seen. Bhautikam, composed of matter. Savikaritvam has these 5 characteristics. Agama paitvam, comes and goes. Perishes, savikaritvam, and also changes. But the world, as we know it, is not conscious. The world is matter with all of these qualities, but it doesn't have the same quality or same characteristic of consciousness. The body is also made of the same matter of the world, but what is different? If you touch me, I feel. So here is matter, but with a plus. Here is matter with a plus. The body is like the earth, like the world is composed of the 5 elements. But in this case, there is matter, but we see, we hear, we touch, we taste, we smell. So we say there is I'm going to use a Sanskrit word here now. There is chetana. There is consciousness. There is consciousness. There is chetana. So there's matter, but I feel, I see, I smell, I talk, I hear, I walk. What is the source of this? Why is this matter, this form of matter, characterized by the presence of chetana, consciousness? You know, when the body dies, body is now sentient, but at death it becomes insentient. Therefore, what is the source of the sentiency when it's alive? Upon death, you know, there's no touch, there's no feel, there's no sight, there is no hearing. The matter is there, but something is not there. But when we are alive, there is chetana. So what is the source, he's asking? Ka u deva yunakti. He uses the word deva. What is that light, deva, that shining light, deva, yunakti? Ka u deva yunakti. What is that effulgent one in the presence of which this body becomes alive? This body functions. This is the question. Because the body is matter, the earth is matter, but there is a difference. Here there is matter that feels, that sees, that touches, that tastes, and so on. What is the source? Kena, by whom? Because of which this body is alive. It's important that we understand this question, and then alone, you know, the answer of the teacher, which begins in verse 2, we can appreciate more. So with this question, I will end our class today after the first hour. And we will continue our discussion with second mantra, Srotasya Srotram, and so on. It gives a very beautiful answer. Student is concise, teacher is concise. We'll go step by step together in our study, and I pray that this study will also be fruitful for all of you.